Angels Care Home Health, serving Hayes and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
I would recommend Angel Care to anybody. They have really helped me regain my strength.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible. Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.
I couldn't have survived this without Angels Care.
Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Hello and welcome again to Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching, and thanks to our producer, as always, Jeff Durrell. We're at Hammond Hall on the campus of Fort Hays State University Conference Room as we visit with Dr. April Park, Assistant Professor, and Dr. Trey Hill, Assistant Professor in the Department of Psychology at Fort Hays State University, about a research project that they did that really involves all of us at some time, because most of us have spent some time buying something. And that was kind of the background from Drs. Park and Hill about the research they did and published on buyer's remorse or experienced regret. Dr. Park, let's start with you. Now, we commonly think of buyer's remorse. We've heard that term as a common term, but psychology professors call it experienced regret. Now, what do you mean?
Well, there is a slight of a difference between buyer's remorse and experienced regret. The common theme is that you are wishing that you could change your past behavior and then make a different decision. So that's kind of the common component. However, buyer's remorse, it's more focused on the emotional component, feeling bad about yourself or feeling bad about your decision. On the other hand, regret, we refer to it as what could I have done differently? In other words, what decisions should I have made? So it's more decision focused, so it involves a little bit more about your cognitive processes, more so than buyer's remorse.
Well, is experienced regret a little more long-term then than buyer's remorse would be?
Not necessarily. Regret can be long-term, or it could also be short-term. Regret, you could regret something about, I should have dated this person, and then you're 60 years old and then you're regretting about it. I don't think you're going to regret about it every day, but you can regret about that. But you could regret something about, oh, why did I buy this pair of jeans? And then regret about it for a week or a day or two, and then just forget about it. So it could be long-term and short-term.
Is there some component, Dr. Park, about the type of situation, like you mentioned, relationship situations, for example, more long-term than something like a short-term buying decision?
That's a really good question. There was actually another study that was published that says about what people regret more in the longer period of time. It's something they hadn't done. So it lingers on, so that's what they remember. But if it's something they had done and then they regret about it, it's usually a short period of time, because what people do when they're regretting about something, they do something to cope with it or do something to get over that feeling, so to speak. So it's a done deal. You don't have to worry about it anymore. So,
what would you add to what Dr. Park has said, Dr. Hill?
Yeah, I can't really comment on the relationship things. Being 60 years old and regretting not doing it. Ask me again in like 30 years. But, we were talking about somebody buying a nice set of Bose noise-canceling headphones a minute ago. It's like $350.
Who shall remain nameless at the moment here.
Yeah, so, if I buy those, or if the unnamed person buys those, and then like a week later they find out that, you could have gotten them at a different location for $50 or slightly used for $50, you're going to feel bad. And that's not just an emotion like buyer's remorse might be. It's more cognitive. You're thinking about it. You're kind of ruminating on it. It has direct ties to memory. It's a slightly different experience qualitatively than just buyer's remorse. But
Is there a point at which you accept the inevitable, that you've actually made that expensive purchase that you really didn't think you should have and have regrets about? Is there a point at which that is diminished or forgotten about?
Yeah, I think eventually you either forget about it or you just accept it. Like Dr. Park was saying, you just, people cope in different ways with it. And these are fairly minimal levels of regret. We're not talking about anything debilitating most of the time.
So you can get over it then, basically, is what you're saying, Dr. Hill. Talk about the level of regret that seems to be minimized, as your study said, by spending a lot of time in research. Now, that at the outset seems pretty obvious. You know, the more you investigate something, regardless of whether it's a relationship, like you talked about, Dr. Park, or something in the way of a purchase, the longer you research or think about it or plan for it, the better outcome it is. Is that an obvious statement, or did you find something different, Dr. Hill?
That's basically what we found, and it does seem obvious, right? The more effort you put into researching a purchase, what we call cognitive effort, the more time, the more cognitive energy you put into doing that, maybe the less regret you're going to experience if you find out you can buy the same thing for less money later. I would argue that it's something called hindsight bias. It's also a psychological term. We tend to think something's common sense like after we found it. I could also make the argument that seems a little bit intuitive as well, that if I do a lot of research on something and I buy it and it still doesn't turn out the way I want it to, well, I just spent all that time. Shouldn't I have figured it out? And shouldn't I also experience a lot more regret as a result?
So you might work in a little guilt along with the rest of it then, huh?
Yeah, you could, but, it could work either way intuitively. So what we found is pretty important, actually, that, spending more time on these purchases can diminish the chance and maybe the strength of the regret later.
What would you add to that?
Well, I think what Dr. Hill just explained is perfect, and then it's very clear. But also what we can add to that is when you are researching about the product, we believe that people are gaining confidence in their decision. So since I mentioned the regret is directly related to how people's regret or how they feel about their decision, so since they were confident that they were making the right decision at that time, so it's going to give them a chance to save themselves from experiencing greater level of regret. So I think that's what's happening there.
Dr. April Park, Assistant Professor in the Department of Psychology at Fort Hays State. Now, I'd like for both of you to talk about the difference of the levels of regret, as we've talked about here before, of shopping online as compared to the brick and mortar stores. Dr. Park, address that first of all, would you?
Sure. So online shopping, it's convenient, so it draws a lot of people to that. But then one key point that is missing there is touch information. So when you actually walk into a store, you're not only seeing things, you smell things, you listen to music that the store plays, and there's a lot of people there too. So it's going to play a very different role in that context. On the other hand, when you are shopping online, a lot of the times you are making your decision by yourself and by just reading the pictures. And research supports that when you are touching products, you trigger more memory related to that product and then more events related to that. So in other words, you are almost forced to use more cognitive energy, which is reducing your regret level later. So I think that's kind of the biggest difference that we found in our study.
And Dr. Hill, what would you add to that particular area of online shopping versus brick and mortar shopping?
Yeah, and Dr. Park said it really well. The online shopping is convenient. A lot of people do it because of the convenience, especially perhaps in a location like Hays where we're sort of isolated geographically. So some people prefer that option, right? There are certain things you can get online. The interesting thing with what we found is that cognitive effort exertion, the more you research something, that's sort of dependent upon where you're shopping. So you might find that spending more cognitive effort on a purchase, like doing more research, that's actually only effective in reducing regret when you're in that online situation. You get less of an effect with spending more time researching something if you're in a store, like a brick and mortar store.
By researching in a brick and mortar situation where you're actually seeing, touching, and interacting with others, maybe at the same level, is there a situation where maybe there's a reaction more positive for the brick and mortar situation than there would be for an online situation because you have more input, as Dr. Park was saying?
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. There are a lot of things about brick and mortar stores that it's difficult to replicate in an online shopping situation, right? You can pick up something, if we're talking about jeans or a laptop, I can pick those items up, rotate them in space in my hands, feel how heavy they are. Maybe that's a sign of quality, or feel the texture, right? With online, some stores will allow you to look at different pictures or rotate them, but it's a very different experience. I think our brains are essentially designed to handle things in a tactile fashion. Right? We're just holding them, we're feeling them, and that's important information that it's hard to replicate.
We don't have as much sensory input then with the online experience versus the brick and mortar experience.
Not yet, I would argue. No. Maybe that's coming. I don't know.
Maybe it's coming, yeah. So talk about this, if you would, Dr. Park, about what factor might customer reviews have for online shopping, because in some situations you have an awful lot of customer reviews that you can read and so forth, positive and negative, versus personal endorsements from friends or neighbors or people who've used the product at work with you and such, and recommend or not recommend type situation. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Customer review can be another great source for gathering information. If you think about it, when you're shopping in a store, a lot of the times salesperson will come up to you and then say, do you have any questions? So that person is right there to provide all kinds of information about the product. So since a lot of the online stores, some actually have that 24/7, do you have any question, like chat box that pops up nowadays? They do have that, but sometimes people think I'm going to process information on my own pace. I don't need that, so kind of shut that box and then voluntarily read through those information to gather more information. So it's more active engagement in decision making when they're reading through the customers' reviews. And also it's the reviews from people who actually bought those. So I think in a way it's very high quality information that people can get by reading those. And of course, I know that people actually look for trends. It's not like they're just reading one review and then make their whole decision based on that. So I think that's benefit of reading those reviews versus so it's massive in quantity a lot of the times, versus your friend is only one person maybe and who might have used this, but the quality of that person, so the decision weight that your friend is bringing into this process could be much higher, much heavier than just reading through all the customer reviews. So
more trusted because this is a person that you know, that you interact with and that you trust, as opposed to people who are total strangers that may or may not have an agenda going in.
Exactly. I would agree with that.
And again, Dr. Hill, your response to that particular area of personal endorsement versus online endorsements or reviews.
So just to finish up with what Dr. Park was saying, one of the reasons I think that friends are more trustworthy is because you pick your friends in large part based on similarity. So they are kind of a reflection of you, unless they do something stupid and then you don't want to admit that. But most of the time, right, they're a little similar to you. So going back to the narrative, or what I would call narrative information, reviews, things like that, what research tends to show is that people pay a lot of attention to reviews, actually more attention to reviews than just the numerical ratings. So for example, on sites like Amazon, you get ratings of 5 stars, 4 stars, so forth. if you have like 500 reviews and 400 of them are 5 stars, and just by chance you're scrolling through the actual written reviews and you get a few really bad reviews, they could just be a few. People are going to weight those really bad reviews a lot more than the numerical ratings of overwhelming positive stuff. So we tend to value like narrative statements from people much more than just math, basically.
All right, I have to ask here in our final moment or so, why would we put more weight in negative reviews even though they are fewer in number than a whole lot of positive reviews? Why do we do that?
That is a great question. I don't...
Oh, come on, you're the psychologist here. You can help us decide this.
Yeah. Well, so the truth is it can work in the opposite direction too. If it's a few positive reviews, written reviews, that's really effective. It's not positive or negative, it's just the fact that they're written. I think we add a personal component when something's written about whatever it is, buying a house or buying a product. It's even more effective if it's like a video tutorial, not tutorial, but video testimonial. The unfortunate part is those are not always the most accurate, right? But we're heavily swayed by them. And this is a great red flag for things like pseudoscience sometimes. If you see like narrative comments or testimonials and no data, then that probably means you don't have data. So if you want to sell something, use narrative comments. If you want to be informed as a consumer, use the statistical information.
Fascinating study. That study, by the way, is in an upcoming print edition, Computers in Human Behavior. And the psychology department at Fort Hays State University can give you more information on that. The print edition, Computers in Human Behavior. And Dr. April Park, Dr. Trey Hill, fascinating study that they did on why we buy what we buy, our community connection.
Angels Care Home Health, serving Hays and the surrounding areas, is a Medicare-certified home health agency providing quality skilled nursing and restorative therapy services to patients in their homes.
There's not any words to describe their kindness.
Angels Care is there to help 24 hours a day, and all services are covered 100% by Medicare for patients who are eligible. Angels Care Home Health. We serve patients.
They saved my life.